A warm welcome to the University of Reading. I'm Caroline Balen. I'm one of the university's Pro-Vice Chancellors, and I'm delighted to welcome you today to our annual Children's Winter Lecture. Today we're going to talk about the reign of the dinosaurs. Today's lecture will be delivered by Dr. Ciara O'Donovan. Ciara's been part of the University of Reading community for 13 years now, since 2010. She studied with us at undergraduate level, and she studied something called zoology. And if you don't know what that is, you can find out a little bit later. It's super exciting. And she's also done a doctorate, that we call here a PhD, in evolutionary biology. Again, some exciting words that if you don't know what it is, we can let you know later on. She's now a postdoctoral research associate. That means she does a lot of research, finding out exciting new things, and she'll share them with you today. Ciara's currently a senior biologist, and she loves to engage and inspire with students of all ages, all of you today. And she loves to make science accessible and fun. So today's lecture, Ciara will take us on a journey back a long, long time ago, about 230 million years ago, at the time where dinosaurs ruled the world. So we'll find out how they came to do that. We'll meet the ancestors of the dinosaurs, and we'll follow them on a journey through time as they evolve and as they spread across the globe. So, without further ado, please, let's get started and welcome Dr. Ciara.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Children's Winter Lecture 2023. I am Ciara, and today we're going to take a trip back in time to explore the reign of the dinosaurs. Firstly, a little bit of housekeeping. In the event of an emergency evacuation, please follow the signs to the emergency exits, and the assembly point is out at the front of the building where you all came in. Please keep mobile phones on silent, and perhaps most importantly, look out for the dinosaurs, which are hidden on the slides of our talk today, and they are carrying special letters. Make sure you write them down on your activity sheet, and they will spell out a secret dinosaur-related word. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story today, and somewhat unusually, that story is going to begin at the end. This is the end of the story. Can anyone tell me what these are? Feel free to shout out. Yes, excellent. Good to know, brains are switched on. These are indeed dinosaur fossils. So we only know that the dinosaurs ever existed because of fossils, because some of those dinosaurs, over the course of tens or sometimes hundreds of millions of years, were preserved in the land. They were discovered, they were dug up, and paleontologists have studied them. And the images here show lots of different types of dinosaur fossils, so we're going to look at some of them a bit more closely. So some very lucky paleontologists have found dinosaur fossils of entire dinosaur bodies or parts of the dinosaurs' bodies. These fossils are really important. They tell us what the dinosaurs looked like. They can help us know how dinosaurs were related to one another. They tell us how they moved, and in the case of things like the dinosaur teeth, in the middle on the right-hand side, we can understand a bit about what the dinosaurs liked to eat. In other cases, we can actually find fossilized soft body parts. So on the right-hand side, you can see fossilized imprints of dinosaur scales, and that's how we know what their skin was like. Alternatively, we can find fossils like those on the left-hand side, which are hard fossils, and they show us that some of the dinosaurs were in fact covered in feathers. The fossil in the middle here is a very special and rare fossil, and that has preserved the dinosaur's feathers in 3 dimensions. So those dinosaur feathers got stuck in sticky tree sap and has been preserved for hundreds of millions of years in the form of an amber fossil. More rare, perhaps, some fossils can preserve dinosaur behaviour, such as this fossil here, which is famous for showing a vicious battle between a protoceratops and a velociraptor. And lastly, there are some fossils that aren't in fact any part of the dinosaur. These fossils show that dinosaurs were present in a given place, but they are not body parts. So in the top left here, we have some dinosaur footprints. They show us that the dinosaurs were present in a particular location, and they can also tell us things like some large dinosaurs like to travel around in really big groups, much like migrating, herding animals that we see alive today. We can see in the top right some clusters of dinosaur eggs. That's how we know that dinosaurs made nests, they laid eggs, and that's how they reproduced. And the picture on the bottom there is in fact a dinosaur embryo inside an egg, so that's an unborn baby dinosaur. Lastly, down here we can see a dinosaur coprolite. Can anyone tell me what that is? Yes, excellent. A dinosaur coprolite is in fact preserved dinosaur poo, and believe it or not, that can tell us a huge amount of information, such as what the dinosaur liked to eat. So all of these fossils, in their huge variety of shapes and sizes and forms, have been found all over the globe, and they tell us so much information about the dinosaurs. So, my next question. Who can tell me what this picture is of?
The map.
A map. Fantastic. Great. Super switched on. So this is a map of our modern globe, and all of those little yellow dots show every dinosaur fossil that's ever been found. So the important thing that we can see here is that the dinosaurs lived everywhere. They were on every continent, in every habitat, and we have found them all over the world and know that they were truly the rulers of Earth. So then, where and what and how did the dinosaurs' reign begin? So put your hand up if you're on break from school now. Brilliant, because we're about to go on a trip back in time to answer our questions about the dinosaurs' reign, and we're going to need to go back pretty far in time. So if we go back 500 years, we're going to find ourselves with this guy. This is Henry VIII, some of his wives maybe. Not much use to us. So how about 2,000 years? We're going to find ourselves with some Romans. I'm sure they were a really nice bunch, but they're not where we wanted to land today. So instead, I'm going to show you this geological time scale. The numbers on this scale are in fact representing millions of years. We can see where we are today, up in the top left corner, in the present day, in yellow. And we need to go back here, 250 million years ago, to the beginning of the Mesozoic era, and to the beginning of the first period within that era, the Triassic. This is what the Earth looked like at that time, 250 million years ago. This map is still labelled with our modern countries, but they don't look like we would expect them to look today. So, back at the beginning of the Triassic, all of Earth's crust was joined together to form one big continent called Pangaea. Now, where do we think Reading might have been on this map? Way up there. It's in the north of Pangaea, probably still rubbish weather back then. And what do we think Reading might have looked like? Was it desert? Was it forest? Let's hop into the map and find out. So This is what your homes would have looked like. This is what the university would have looked like. We would have been floating in the middle of an open sea. There would have been giant marine reptiles swimming around us, such as an ichthyosaur in the top right-hand corner. Ichthyosaurs are not dinosaurs, but they are a closely related group of marine reptiles. The two pictures of fossils next to the ichthyosaurs are both fossils that have been found in the UK. Also swimming around with ichthyosaurs were ammonites, such as the one pictured on the bottom right. Ammonites, like dinosaurs and ichthyosaurs, are also extinct now, but they were very closely related to our modern squid and octopus. And unlike ichthyosaurs, ammonites can be commonly found on the coasts of the UK, such as in Lyme Regis. So, let's visit the start of our story now. Let's get back to the dinosaurs. We know a bit about where the dinosaurs ended up, everywhere, and we know that they ruled the Earth. But how did it all begin? Let's set the scene. All of the land on Earth is formed one major continent called Pangaea, and the Earth has just encountered the most catastrophic extinction event that it had ever seen at the time. That extinction event is known as the End Permian Extinction Event, also known as the Great Dying, because 90% of all life on Earth and in the seas died out because of this event. It happened in pulses, and it's not really known why it happened, but some hypotheses that have been put forward are that volcanism, you can see raging volcanoes in the background, and release of methane from underwater stores are what contributed at least to causing that big event. But not all doom and gloom. Lots of animals and plants did survive the Great Dying. Animals such as giant insects, the dragonflies pictured there. There were arachnids such as spiders and scorpions that survived. There were reptiles, tortoises, and mammal-like reptiles such as the cynodont pictured here. There were also plants. Flowering plants hadn't yet evolved, so the plants that dominated environments were things like ferns and vast conifer forests. Lastly, an important character in our story who survived that Great Dying was the ancestor of the dinosaurs. Now we need to hop over to a different part of Pangaea. We need to go into our map at about 230 million years ago into what is now modern-day Argentina. And that's where we think the first ever dinosaur lived. This is what the land might have looked like at that time. So we've got a big forest. There are no flowers because they haven't evolved yet. Looks like a nice place to be. So what about our dinosaur ancestor? This single species would give rise to every single dinosaur species that we know and love today. But what could that ancestor have been like? So, I'd like to have my 3 volunteers who are going to help us answer that question. So we're going to compare the size of the dinosaur ancestor to 3 animals that we know about and the sizes of our 3 volunteers here. We've got a T-Rex, a grizzly bear, and a wild turkey. It's time to vote. Who thinks that our dinosaur ancestor would have been a similar size to a T-Rex? Show of hands or shout out? Okay, there's some hands. Who thinks that the ancestor of the dinosaurs was the size of a grizzly bear? Ooh, okay, some more hands. And who thinks that the ancestor of the dinosaurs was the size of a wild turkey? Okay, great, good news. Thank you very much to my volunteers. And a round of applause, please, for our lovely animal holders. Ooh. Okay, so we've definitely got a room full of dinosaur experts, because the answer is, in fact, the wild turkey. The first ever dinosaur to have existed was the size of a wild turkey. The ancestor would have been small, it would have been lightweight, it would have walked on two legs, and it may have looked something like this. So this single animal here would have been the start of the dinosaurs' story. Every dinosaur species that we know about from fossils all over the world was a descendant of this one species. So, now we know the end of the story, and we know the beginning of the story. Let's find out what on earth happened in the middle. We know that the dinosaurs were descended from a small bipedal ancestor that lived 230 million years ago. In the Triassic, there were very few dinosaurs, and as we've seen, they were pretty small and puny. Not exactly rulers of the earth. So what happened that helped them gain their rule? Well, there's multiple ideas about that. One idea is called competitive replacement. And that means that there was just something special about the dinosaurs, something special that meant that they were better than anything else that was alive at the time. Something that helped them to get food, to find a mate, to adapt quickly to their environments, and essentially mean that they were better than anything else that was alive so that they could rule over the terrestrial world. Now, we don't know what that thing was that made the dinosaurs special, maybe something in their DNA. But it allowed those dinosaurs to outcompete everything else and get to the top. Another idea is actually that dinosaurs were just in the right place at the right time. So we know that just before the ancestor of dinosaurs arose, there was this enormously catastrophic extinction event. So they had a blank canvas. We also know that there was no barriers to their movement. They could just skip all over the globe because of Pangaea. There wasn't even oceans to stop them. And then, at the end of the Triassic, there was another smaller extinction event which would have further cleared their path so that they could reach the top. In reality, it's probably a combination of those factors. The dinosaurs were special, and they were also in the right place at the right time. So, step one on the road to global domination is get out of South America. The dinosaurs needed to spread, and they did just that. Dinosaurs exploded out of South America. They moved rapidly in every direction, they entered every habitat on Earth, and they conquered. As they moved across the globe, they experienced different environments, and they needed to adapt to those environments. And as they went, as they spread, more species of dinosaurs kept popping up. So why exactly does spreading over the Earth mean that you generate more species? Well, to think about that, I'm going to need my 6 other helpers, and we're going to answer that question. Okay, fabulous. So we've got a really lovely, luscious green habitat for our dinosaurs to inhabit. And here, my lovely helpers represent 2 populations of dinosaurs. So although these look like two young men, in actual fact, what we have here is a cluster of dinosaurs in each of them. And these dinosaurs, no offence, are boring and grey. So I'm going to say that you're population 1. So population 1, and actually if I can ask you to squeeze over here just for a second. Thank you. So population 1 has come into our beautiful, luscious green habitat. Now, you're not going to do so well with just grey scales. So you're going to have to adapt. And I'll take both of them. Thank you. So instead of your grey scales, I'm going to swap you. And I'm going to give you some lovely green spotty scales. Also, to be able to survive, our population 1 is going to need some food. So you can eat these lovely green leaves. Great. Population 1 is thriving, increasing in number, very happy. Now, population 2. Population 2 has to come into our new habitat because as the world is filling up with dinosaurs, they've run out of uncolonised space. So, population 1 was happy here and has been happy here for a while. But population 2 is going to have to join us because there's no uncolonised space for them to be in. So population 2, in the same way, you're not going to do so well with your grey scales. So we're going to give you some lovely brown scales, and we're going to allow you to eat some leaves. There you go, there's your leaves. Okay, now everyone's happy in our habitat, and so our dinosaurs increase in number. Does everyone else want to come and join? You can join whichever population you would like.
Brilliant. Amazing.
Lovely. Okay, so we've got lots of dinosaurs roaming around our lovely habitat now. But all of those dinosaurs are trying to eat the same food source, and now there's too many of them. So there's a huge amount of competition for those resources, and that means that something's going to have to change. So our population 2, rather than eating those leaves, is going to evolve. And it's going to evolve to eat the fruit of those trees. So I'm going to swap you this card for this lovely fruity card. Now, you can't just evolve to eat fruit if you're a leaf eater. So, in order to eat the fruit, you're going to need to adapt in other ways. So can I give you this card, please? You're going to need to change your teeth. You're going to need to evolve a really long tongue so that you can reach into the vegetation and grab that fruit. You're also going to have to evolve your digestive system so that you can digest the fruit. All of those changes mean that actually you're not going to be able to eat the leaves anymore if you ever had to. So that means that we now have 2 completely separate species of dinosaur in our environment because they have both adapted and undergone changes that mean that they are not very closely related to each other anymore. And our population 2 has undergone a process called specialisation, and that will be important for our story later. So, thank you very much to our volunteers. A round of applause, please. Thank you. Okay, so to recap, we started off with our lovely empty environment, and into that we had our grey population, or populations, and they moved in, they changed, and they thrived. When there was too many dinosaurs in our environment, our population 2 had to change some more. So we had generated species, and then one of those species had to specialise. What did that mean for the dinosaurs, though, on a global scale? Well, globally, the dinosaurs flourished. They adapted, they evolved into hundreds or perhaps over 1,000 new species. Their diversity was vast, showing different colours, sizes, behaviours and adaptations. Some dinosaurs walked on 4 legs, and some dinosaurs walked on 2. Of those that walked on 2 legs, sometimes their forelimbs or arms adapted to become so small that they virtually weren't there, like in the Carnotaurus pictured here. He couldn't scratch his nose. Other dinosaurs adapted to be gigantic. This is an Argentinosaurus, and it's a sauropod dinosaur. It's one of the largest land animals to ever have existed. It would have probably weighed between 50,000 and 100,000 kilograms, and the length of it probably would have been equivalent of 3 double-decker buses and maybe 1.5 double-decker buses high. They were actually herbivores. They only ate plant material, and they were characteristic of the group of sauropod dinosaurs. Other dinosaurs evolved elaborate head crests. We think that those would have served them to help to find a mate. Some dinosaurs only ate plants, and they were the herbivores. And some dinosaurs evolved to be able to eat meat. They were carnivores. And those carnivores would have eaten any of the animals that were alive at the time, including other dinosaurs. Some dinosaurs, like these ankylosaurids, evolved to have armour, and that armour took very different forms. But as you can see, some of those things might have been spines embedded in their skin, tail whips, and horns on their heads. And that biological weaponry could be used against predators so that they weren't eaten by carnivores, or they could help in battles of between individuals of the same species that were competing for food or mates. Some dinosaurs, in fact mostly these large ones like the sauropods pictured here, they moved in herds, so they showed that behaviour that we see today in animals such as bison. They migrated across the world in these large groups, mostly probably for protective purposes. And some of them even liked to nest together in large colonies. So whilst the dinosaurs were flourishing, there were huge changes going on to the Earth as well. So this is a really weird map. It looks really blurry. That's because this map shows a layer for every time period in the Triassic. The paler layers show the land positions early on in time, and the darker layer that's outlined in black shows how the Earth looked at the end of the Triassic. You can see that the land masses are connected and that Pangaea was still present at the time. Next, into the Jurassic, it's noticeable that Pangaea started to split apart. We can begin to see oceans and that continents separately are forming. And lastly, by the end of the Cretaceous, we can see that the continents have fully split apart, and actually the Earth looks remarkably like it does today. So the dinosaurs were ruling everywhere. They had filled the Earth. But the frenzy had to peter out. They couldn't carry on like that forever. There weren't any more uncolonised habitats to find, and movement over the globe had to slow down. And that meant that fewer species were being made, and competition for resources was intense, just like we saw from our helpers earlier. So it's looking like the beginning of the end of our story. The dinosaurs could still make new species by specialising, but that was very slow. And essentially, more species were dying out than were being made. So for about 50 million years, the reign of the dinosaurs was in fact crumbling, and they began to decline. And then the unthinkable happened. About 66 million years ago, a giant asteroid collided with Earth. It collided at a speed of about 50,000 miles per hour. The impact site was in Chicxulub in Mexico, and the crater that was formed by that asteroid impact was about 180 kilometers in diameter. And to put that in perspective, that's the distance from Reading to Manchester. The impact and the aftermath was global in its extent. It affected every terrestrial and marine habitat on Earth. Within 5 minutes of that asteroid impact, the kinetic energy that would have been released would have been equivalent to that of 300 million nuclear bombs. Within about a week, the dust fallout from the impact would have stretched 4,000 kilometers, which is Reading to Saudi Arabia. And that had the effect that within a month, the dust and soot that filled the air blocked out the sun and caused darkness, a constant night. And that lasted for several years, which meant that essentially the temperatures on Earth became freezing, and that's known as the KT winter. So there was huge devastation caused by that asteroid impact. And the dinosaurs, who were already declining and in trouble, really, really struggled. So specialized species cannot really cope when their environments change. And we know that every environment on Earth was drastically altered. Without plants, because there was no sunlight, the herbivores died. And without herbivores, the carnivores began to decline. And this asteroid impact was the final nail in the coffin for the already suffering dinosaurs. And much of the other life on Earth also died out. But let's turn the story around. There were lots of survivors of this asteroid impact and of this extinction event. So, surviving that impact were amphibians, reptiles, insects, plants, and early mammals. This is the mammal ancestor, a shrew-like organism weighed about 120 grams, and if this animal had not survived, we would not be sitting here today. Also, there was another secret survivor of the asteroid impact. What if I told you that not all of the dinosaurs went extinct? There was a group of dinosaurs that were so different from their relatives that they managed to survive that awful asteroid impact, and it allowed them to live on. So, just to be clear, what I'm telling you is that not all of the dinosaurs went extinct. This group of dinosaurs was a fairly close relative of Tyrannosaurus rex, and like some of its dinosaur relatives, they were covered in feathers. But unlike their close relatives, this group of dinosaurs was small, they were lightweight, their forelimbs or arms had evolved into wings, and they had the ability to jump, glide, and potentially even fly. So this single lineage of dinosaurs was so different that they survived the awful time. Now I'm going to bring you back to the present day. Here we are, back in December 2023. And I'm going to tell you that that small group of dinosaurs persisted for millions of years after the asteroid impact. And in fact, they are still alive today. They have diversified into one of the largest groups of vertebrates that we see on Earth. They are the birds. That single lineage has adapted into 10,000 species of birds that thrive and live everywhere today, from flightless kakapos to the robins that we see in our gardens, to chickens that we farm. All of these species are dinosaurs. So, the next time you're walking down a street and you see some pigeons, what's actually happening is that you are walking with dinosaurs. Thank you very much.
So, a very, very big thank you and another clap for Dr. Ciara. This was an amazing, a wonderful lecture, wasn't it? Yes. I hope you've enjoyed following this amazing evolutionary story about the dinosaurs. Now, we have a bit of time for questions. So if you have any questions today, I would encourage you to raise your hand like you do at school. I would also like to warn everybody that we're only going to take questions from children, right? However, if you are a child and you're a little bit shy and you have a question, you can ask a grown-up next to you and they can ask on your behalf. So, let's see. We have microphones around. We're going to look around. I think the boy in kind of beige, yes, was there first.
I don't know.
Hello. What's your question?
Did the animals which were related to squid evolve?
Yes. So all of life that exists and has ever existed has one common ancestor. So everything that we see today and everything that we see in the fossil record is all related and has all come from one single ancestor.
Okay. All right, we're going to go there with the hoodie. Go ahead.
Why are dinosaurs called dinosaurs?
Oh, great question. So the term dinosaur comes from the Latin and it means terrible lizard.
Terrible lizard. Okay. Yes, over here.
How did dinosaurs turn into fossils?
Oh, another great question. Wow.
We're going to go.
So that process takes a lot of luck, but when a dinosaur died, it had to be buried by land or sediment, and if it stayed there undisturbed and there was no oxygen and there was no bacteria, then it was preserved in that space. All of the tissue will have decayed away, so all of the skin and all of the organs, and then minerals would have filled the gap that those tissues would have taken up. So when those minerals then fill the space, they harden, and then, so long as there's no landslides or volcanic activity or human destruction, those fossils can survive. And they're found and dug up and then they're studied.
Great. We're going to go to the little boy in green and then after the girl with long hair, and then we'll zigzag up and down, I think, because there's quite a few questions. So go ahead.
Are we related to dinosaurs?
Oh, yes. Technically, yes. So dinosaurs came from a group of organisms called archosaurs, and archosaurs gave rise to, eventually, the mammal ancestor and to the dinosaurs. So we're not very closely related, but ultimately, yes, every part of life is related in some way.
Okay, good. We're going to take a couple more questions down here, and then I'll ask the microphone helpers to go up, and then we'll go back down again. So, little girl with long hair, and then here, and then the boy with glasses, and then we'll go up, and then we'll come back in the middle. Yeah.
How do you know how old the dinosaurs are by the fossils?
So, when dinosaurs are buried, they're buried in layers, and the rock layers are preserved all over the globe. And we can tell from things like radiocarbon dating, which is just a really fancy thing that geologists do. But they know how old the rock layer is. And so if a fossil occurs in that layer, then we age it the same as the rock layer that it's in.
Okay. Go ahead here, yes.
Did some dinosaurs fly?
Well, yes, because we know that birds are dinosaurs, and so we think that very early on in birds' history that when they evolved their wings, that they would have used those wings for kind of hopping around and gliding, and eventually that would have turned into active flight.
You find the biggest dinosaur fossil.
Well, Mary Anning found lots of fossils. She actually found one of the ichthyosaur fossils that was in the picture that I showed. It's in the Natural History Museum. I think mostly she found marine organisms.
Okay, good. We're going to go right at the top in the red t-shirt.
What's your favourite dinosaur?
That's a good one.
Luckily, I'd prepared for that one. So my favourite dinosaur is a dinosaur called Patagotitan. It's the largest dinosaur ever to have existed. It rivaled Argentinosaurus in its size. And I was lucky enough to go and see it in New York. And for any dinosaur enthusiasts, which I hope all of you are, that exact Patagotitan fossil is now visiting the Natural History Museum in London. So it's available for all of you to go and see.
Okay. Here, yes.
How loud is a T-Rex's roar?
Oh, great question. So that's something that scientists really don't know much about. Unfortunately, current thinking is that it might not have been that ferocious at all. But it's very difficult to know about their noise-making capacities because vocal cords don't fossilise. So we don't really know.
Okay, and back at the top over there.
What? What country has the most fossils?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I think probably China has quite a lot, but China's quite a big country, so maybe that's unfair. I'm not sure which country has the most for its area. I would probably say China, though.
Okay, all right. And then we're back at the middle. We're going. I can see you really want. We'll get you the microphone in a minute as well.
What are you going to say?
Oh, okay. There's
Stay
dark
up
purple.
when it's my turn.
Okay. And then we'll pass behind you if that's okay after that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Other than like the actual dinosaurs, how can we tell what happened to those events and stuff?
So it's really difficult. Like with the Great Dying, even though it was such a huge and catastrophic event, it's really difficult to know like why that happened. And for a long time, until the asteroid impact site was found from the KT extinction that killed most of the dinosaurs, we didn't know that had caused that extinction event. Literally needed to find the crater in order to understand that. So it's a balance of understanding kind of which organisms went extinct. Sometimes that's a good clue. Sometimes there's a geographical bias that can be a good clue. But it's all a bit piecing a puzzle together and a bit of guesswork sometimes.
Okay, good. At the top, then in the middle, and then there's some at the top on this side, and at the front on this side as well. There's so many questions, it's amazing. So we start over here, yes.
What's the difference about dinosaurs and T-Rex?
Ooh, well, they were both very similar dinosaurs. They were from slightly different groups, but they're very closely related. There aren't that many differences. They looked a little bit different, but they were both very big. They both had very big teeth, and they were both carnivores, so they both would have been predators. Not a huge amount of difference between them.
Good. In the middle, please ask your question and then pass the mic back this way so that we can send it over there.
How was the first dinosaur born?
Oh, wow.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. So the first dinosaur would have been born, a simple answer, the first dinosaur would have been born from an egg. But the complicated answer is that first dinosaur species came from something else. So that ancestor of all dinosaurs itself had an ancestor. So it would have been some kind of archosaurian reptile. We know that much. It would have had scales. It probably also would have been quite small. It survived that big, great dying. But yeah, it would have had its own ancestor that it came from, and some changes that happened to it would have meant that it was a new species that then gave rise to the rest of the dinosaurs.
Okay, great, good. Little girl over there, how's your question? Pass it to your neighbour who wants to.
How long did it take the first dinosaur to fossilise?
I have no idea. You're going to have to look that one up. Yeah, it's a very long process.
Okay, we're going to go on the side at the top.
Where's the best place to find dinosaurs in England?
Probably Lyme Regis.
Oh, Lyme Regis. Okay.
There's quite a lot in the Isle of Wight that keep popping up though as well. South Coast.
Okay, boy in blue with the microphone.
How many new dinosaurs, how many animals were alive when the dinosaurs were alive?
A lot. Yeah, there would have been a great variety of life, given we know that alive today is only 1% of all life that ever existed on Earth. So back when the dinosaurs existed, there would have been probably more than are alive today.
Okay, back at the top.
How sharp were Stegosaurus phagomisers?
You might not have wanted to touch them. I don't know how to answer the question. I mean, sharp.
Okay, over there in the middle, purple, yeah.
How long were the Stegosaurus?
How long was it?
Pass it to the...
I don't know. Much smaller than any of the sauropod dinosaurs. It would have been smaller than a T-Rex as well. Okay, great, 12 metres.
12 metres. Okay, we've got a question over there in the corner in orange.
How many different dinosaur species are there?
Great question, difficult question. All of these questions are very challenging. So we think perhaps just over 1,000, but it's difficult to know because there's several hundred of them being named each year. So we find new dinosaur species all the time. So that number constantly grows. And also some of the dinosaurs that existed didn't fossilise. So there will have been species that we'll never know about having existed. But our current kind of best guess is maybe 1,200 species.
Okay, good. So we're going to go back in the middle here, then over there. Go ahead.
When the dinosaurs died out, did the animals in the sea that were alive back then die out too?
So lots of marine life was affected by the asteroid impact. That impact caused things like enormous tsunamis, and they would have been affected by the lack of sunlight and the freezing temperatures as well. But we do know that from that extinction event, marine life was less affected than terrestrial life.
Okay. Little boy there.
How long is a Diplodocus's neck?
Oh, long. Longer than ours.
Pass it back here, and then we're going back up and down. Okay. Where was the other microphone back in the... Over there. So, okay, here. Go ahead.
Why are dinosaur names in Latin?
So when dinosaurs were discovered, natural historians were used to naming everything in Latin. All lessons and things would have been taught in Latin, and that was the the kind of common way of doing things. It meant that names didn't have to be translated between languages specific to countries. Latin was a universally used language in science.
Yeah. So if you have already asked a question, because we only have 3 minutes left, I'm going to ask you to lower your arm and let other people ask questions, because I see some of you are super eager, but I know you've already asked questions, I remember. So here.
Did certain herbivores eat certain plants?
Yes, they would have done, and particularly towards the end of the dinosaurs era, as they specialised more, will have had specific plants they would have eaten. But also, you can only eat plants that would have occurred in your environment, and that would have differed over the globe.
Okay, Red Hoodie there.
Okay, so how do you know what Pangea looks like?
Good question. So fossils actually help us a lot with that. Fossils help us to know that certain continents would have been in contact with one another. So organisms, for example, that are found in China, in the east of China and the west of North America, if they're the same, we know they can't have crossed an ocean. So we know that those continents at some point in history would have been combined. Also, geologists help us know that, because we can see that there are common layers of sediment between the different parts of Earth's crust. So we know, for example, that those coastlines would have fitted together before they broke apart.
Okay,
Pink. Did T-Rexes eat other T-Rexes or not?
Really difficult to know. Really difficult to know who ate who. Chances are possibly. It's a little bit debated whether T-Rex was a really good predator or actually just a scavenger. If they were scavengers, then the chances are they probably would have eaten carcasses of other T-Rexes. Typically, it probably wouldn't have been a first choice.
okay. And question here in blue.
Why are birds called birds and not dinosaurs?
Great question. So they're not called dinosaurs commonly because they have adapted and evolved to be their own group. So if we named everything by what their ancestor was, we would be calling everything like single-celled, globby, soupy organism. So everything, when it has enough changes to be its own new group, gains a new name. But biologically, they're dinosaurs. I would call them dinosaurs.
They're also called different things in different languages.
Yes, very true.
Over there.
What do you think, what dinosaur do you think has the most teeth?
Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, something that liked to eat meat, I would think.
Okay. And at the front?
How did sharks and turtles survive the meteor crash?
Another good question. Well, it could have been because they were special, so they had something in their DNA that enabled them to survive, and it could have just been that they were lucky.
Okay, and at the top in the middle?
What was the best fossil you have ever seen?
Probably, there's a fossil called Archaeopteryx, and that fossil is super famous because it helped us to know that birds are dinosaurs. It's a fossil that shows dinosaur traits and bird traits, so it's known as a transitional fossil, and that helped massively in forming a puzzle of the story of the dinosaurs and birds.
Okay, and in red here.
How many dinosaurs are in Antarctica?
Not very many, but there were some. Off the top of my head, I could probably think of 3. But those are the ones that have fossilised. There may have been hundreds more. We don't know.
Okay. And purple at the top?
Are giraffes related to dinosaurs? No, Diplodocus because of their long necks.
Yeah. That's a good question. Not really, no. So giraffes are mammals like we are, and dinosaurs are reptiles, and they have long necks for a similar reason that some of the dinosaurs had long necks. So they have food that's in the tops of trees that they need to be able to reach. So that's a thing called where the same trait evolves into not very closely related organisms because of a common pressure. And for them both, that was being able to eat things from trees.
So we're going to take 3 more questions, one from each segment. I just say we've got one here, we've got one here, and then one, oh, there's 2 of them. 2 there, green and pink, yes? Okay, I don't want anybody to feel left out, so let's start over here.
What's the difference between a Carnotaurus and a Majangosaurus?
Oh.
Well, I can tell you one very big difference, and that was that Carnotaurus's forelimbs had reduced so much that they were virtually not there. But they were also very closely related theropod dinosaurs.
Okay, and over here?
How did scales turn into feathers?
Great question. So scales didn't turn into feathers per se. The feathered dinosaurs would still have had scales, but they would have evolved to have these additional skin structures, which turned into feathers.
Okay, and the last 2 questions over there.
How do you know what dinosaurs sound like?
Tricky. So we don't really. Some of the dinosaurs that had particularly elaborate head crests or skull structures, we think would have been because it would have helped them to resonate their sounds. So we know that they might have had low frequency noises that would have been spread a long distance because of those structures. But because their vocal cords don't fossilise, we don't really know.
Okay, and the last question today.
Why is a T-Rex called a T-Rex?
I should know that one. That's to do with its Latin name as well. Something to do with a claw, maybe, I think.
Okay, well, we'll have to find out. Maybe you can research that yourself. So thank you, everybody. There's been so many questions. You are amazing, and I think Dr. Ciara has been tested.
Yes, very much.
to the limit here. It's worse than a PhD Viva or anything like that. So I hope you've enjoyed the children's lecture today. Please look out in the new year for our next lecture in the spring, which will take place on the 27th of March and will be delivered by Professor Ludovica Serratrice, who will talk about multilingualism, so how birds are called something else in other languages. And we would love to see you all here. On behalf of the university, once again, I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening, and I hope you have a wonderful time this holiday. Have a happy holiday, everybody. Now, before you go, because I know some of you might, not like surprises, but if you like surprises, that would be good. When you come out, there will be a surprise. So be ready for a surprise, right? Okay.